Humanity's dual nature: peacemakers or warriors? The core of the story lies in the exploration of humanity's dual nature, a species capable of both extraordinary compassion and terrifying violence. This theme is central to the unfolding drama within the Galactic Council and serves as a driving force behind the reactions and decisions of both the humans and the alien representatives. A history of conflict and cooperation. From the moment humans were discovered by the Galactic Council, their reputation preceded them. Reports from scout ships and intelligence operatives painted a complex picture of a species that had risen from the ashes of countless internal conflicts. The human history was one of perpetual struggle, wars fought over resources, ideologies, and survival. These wars had forged a species that was not only resilient but also deeply pragmatic, capable of adapting to any situation. However, alongside this history of conflict, there was also a rich tradition of cooperation and alliance building. Humanity had learned that strength alone was not enough to secure a future. Cooperation, diplomacy, and mutual benefit were equally important. This duality, a race of warriors who also valued peace, made humanity an enigma to the other species. First impressions: the fear of the unknown. When humanity's representatives first entered the Galactic Council chamber, they did so with a deliberate display of strength. Admiral Helena Drake, chosen for her military expertise rather than diplomatic experience, embodied the might of the Terran Confederation. Her presence was a stark contrast to the other diplomats, who were more accustomed to negotiation tables than battlefields. The other species watched in uneasy silence as the human delegation took their place. The fear of the unknown gripped them. These newcomers had achieved in a few decades what had taken other civilizations centuries. What were the limits of human ambition? What lengths would they go to secure their place in the galaxy? This fear was compounded by the sight of the human fleet. The ships were not just vessels of war, they were symbols of humanity's capability and willingness to defend their interests. The other species were forced to confront a chilling reality: humanity could be a valuable ally, but they could also be an unstoppable enemy. Diplomacy or intimidation, the fine line? Admiral Drake's approach to the negotiations was a calculated blend of diplomacy and intimidation. She knew that humanity's reputation would precede them, and she intended to use that to her advantage. But she also understood the importance of forging alliances. Humanity could not stand alone against the galaxy, no matter how powerful their fleet. Her words were carefully chosen to convey both a desire for peace and a readiness for war. "We come in peace," she had said, but the unspoken message was clear that peace was conditional, dependent on how humanity was treated by the other species. Any threat to their sovereignty would be met with overwhelming force. This fine line between diplomacy and intimidation kept the other species and Ambassador Thrix on edge. They could not predict how humanity would react in any given situation. Would they extend a hand of friendship, or would they unleash the full might of their fleet? This uncertainty added a layer of psychological tension to the negotiations, making every interaction a potential flashpoint. The other species' dilemma: friend or foe? As the meeting progressed, the other species found themselves in a dilemma. On one hand, aligning with humanity could provide them with a powerful ally, one capable of protecting them from external threats. On the other hand, there was a pervasive fear that once humanity had solidified its position in the galaxy, they might turn their attention to conquest. This fear was not unfounded. Throughout history, humanity had demonstrated a remarkable ability to turn on its former allies when it suited their interests. The other species could not be sure that humanity's current peaceful overtures were genuine, or merely a prelude to something more sinister. The tension within the Galactic Council was palpable. Every species was forced to reevaluate their stance. Should they welcome humanity into their ranks, hoping to benefit from their strength and innovation? Or should they band together to contain this new, unpredictable force before it was too late? A race defined by choices. Ultimately, the story of humanity in the Galactic Council is one of choices. The humans had a choice to embrace their role as peacemakers and build a future based on mutual respect and cooperation, or to fall back on their warrior instincts, viewing every species as a potential threat. Similarly, the other species faced a choice to trust that humanity's desire for peace was genuine, or to prepare for the worst, knowing that this new player in the galactic arena had the capability to reshape the balance of power in ways they could scarcely imagine. This duality of humanity, the constant interplay between their capacity for peace and their propensity for war, served as the central tension in the story. It kept the other species on edge, uncertain of which side of humanity would prevail in this new galactic order. Would the humans become the guardians of peace in the galaxy, using their strength to protect and uplift other species, or would they become conquerors, driven by an insatiable desire for power and control? This uncertainty, this ever-present tension between two possible futures, is what made the story compelling. It posed a fundamental question: what kind of force would humanity choose to be in the galaxy? And perhaps more importantly, what kind of galaxy would the other species help create by the choices they made in response? Power dynamics in the Galactic Council: a new player disrupts the balance. The Galactic Council had existed for millennia, a governing body that united the galaxy's most powerful and ancient civilizations. It was a place where politics and diplomacy were as finely honed as the most advanced technologies. The Council had long established a delicate balance of power, where each species understood its role, its allies, and its rivals. This balance was not just about military strength, but about influence, trade agreements, shared knowledge, and cultural exchanges. It was a system that, while not without its flaws, had managed to maintain a relative peace across the galaxy. The arrival of humanity threatened to upend all of this. A carefully maintained status quo. Before humanity's introduction, the Galactic Council was dominated by a few key species, each with its own sphere of influence. The Zevrak, the oldest species in the Council, had long been the voice of reason and tradition. Their wisdom and caution had earned them the unofficial role of mediators, ensuring that conflicts between other species were resolved with minimal disruption to the galactic order. The Xanthian Coalition, a conglomerate of technologically advanced species, wielded significant economic power. They controlled the flow of rare resources and advanced technologies, making them indispensable to the Council. Their influence was subtle but pervasive, a reminder that in the galaxy, wealth was as crucial as firepower. Then there were the militaristic Urzani, a warrior race that, while not the most technologically advanced, had proven time and again that they could hold their own in battle. Their strength lay in their discipline and unity, and they served as the Council's enforcers, maintaining peace through the threat of force. These three powers, along with several smaller but still significant species, had created a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and mutual dependencies. The Council's decisions were often the result of intricate negotiations, where each species weighed its own interests against the greater good of galactic stability. It was a delicate balance, one that had been honed over centuries. The disruptive arrival of humanity. When humanity was discovered, they were initially regarded as a curiosity and upstart species from the fringes of the galaxy, still recovering from their own internal conflicts. But as more information about them trickled into the Council, curiosity turned into concern, and concern quickly became alarm. Humanity's rapid technological advancement, driven by necessity and a relentless drive to overcome challenges, had brought them to the brink of joining the galactic community far sooner than anyone had anticipated. They had achieved in decades what took other species centuries. Their ability to innovate, to adapt, and to recover from setbacks was unparalleled. But what truly set humanity apart was their military capability. Unlike other species that had focused on specific strengths, technology, trade, or diplomacy, humans had developed a well-rounded approach that included all aspects of power. Their fleet was vast and versatile, capable of both defensive operations and large-scale assaults. More importantly, they had a history of using it. This was not a species content to sit quietly in the corner of the galaxy. They were bold, ambitious, and perhaps most worryingly, unpredictable. The established powers within the Council quickly realized that humanity's inclusion would not be a simple matter of adding another voice to the chorus. It would fundamentally alter the dynamics of the Council, shifting alliances and strategic recalculations. The immediate consequence of humanity's arrival was a flurry of secret meetings and quiet conversations among the established powers. Each species began to reassess its position in the galactic hierarchy. The Zevrak, with their vast experience, were among the first to see the potential dangers. They knew that humanity's presence would necessitate a shift in strategies, alliances, and even the Council's overall direction. The Xanthians, always the pragmatists, saw both opportunity and threat. Humanity's technological prowess could be a boon to their own industries, opening up new avenues for trade and cooperation. But they also recognized the potential for conflict. Humanity's independence and unwillingness to be controlled meant that they would not easily fall into the Xanthians' economic sphere of influence. For the Urzani, humanity was both a challenge and a kindred spirit. They respected strength, and humanity had it in spades. But the Urzani were also acutely aware that they could not afford to ignore the possibility of conflict with this new power. The Urzani had long been the Council's muscle, but now, for the first time in generations, they faced the prospect of a rival that could match them ship for ship, soldier for soldier. The smaller species within the Council were perhaps the most anxious. They had always relied on the balance of power between the larger species to protect their own interests. Humanity's arrival threatened to disrupt this balance, leaving them vulnerable. Would humanity see them as potential allies, or as pawns in a larger game? The uncertainty was unsettling. The Council session, a theater of power. The day humanity's representatives first entered the Galactic Council chamber was a moment of intense scrutiny. Every move, every word spoken by Admiral Drake and her delegation was analyzed and reanalyzed by the other species. The Council, typically a place of measured discussions and cautious diplomacy, suddenly felt like a theater of power. Admiral Drake's decision to lead the delegation herself was a statement in itself. She was not a diplomat in the traditional sense, she was a military leader, and her presence sent a clear message: humanity was not here to be trifled with. The other species could sense the shift in the air. The balance of power was already beginning to tilt. As Drake spoke, the other representatives watched her closely. The Zevrak, ever cautious, noted the firmness in her voice, the way she chose her words to imply both cooperation and strength. The Xanthians were more interested in what was left unsaid: the potential for future trade, the unspoken agreements that could be made behind closed doors. The Urzani, for their part, were sizing her up as a potential rival or ally on the battlefield. The holographic display of the human fleet hovering on the edge of their space only heightened the tension. It was a clear demonstration of power, but also a test. How would the other species react? Would they be cowed, or would they rise to the challenge? An uncertain future for the Council. The inclusion of humanity into the Galactic Council set off a chain reaction that no one could fully predict. The established powers were forced to reconsider long-held assumptions. The Zevrak, with their wisdom, knew that the old ways of doing things might no longer be sufficient. They began to explore new strategies, new ways to engage with humanity that did not rely solely on diplomacy. The Xanthians, ever pragmatic, saw both the danger and the potential for profit. They began to reach out to human corporations and scientific institutions, hoping to establish economic ties that could secure their influence over this new power. The Urzani, meanwhile, started to prepare for the possibility of conflict. They strengthened their alliances with other militaristic species, conducted war games to simulate potential encounters with human forces, and doubled down on their own military production. And yet, despite all these efforts, there was an undercurrent of fear throughout the Council. The fear that humanity, with all its unpredictability, might change the rules of the game in ways that no one could anticipate. The fear that the balance of power, so carefully maintained for millennia, might be irrevocably shattered. The smaller species, caught in the crossfire of these shifting dynamics, found themselves in an increasingly precarious position. Some sought to align themselves with humanity, hoping to secure their protection. Others doubled down on their existing alliances, wary of the humans' true intentions. In the end, humanity's arrival was not just the addition of another voice to the Council, it was a seismic shift that forced every species to re-examine their place in the galaxy. The old alliances, the old strategies, the old balance of power, all were called into question. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of stability, now found itself navigating uncharted waters. And as the humans made their presence felt, the only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same again. The psychological battle diplomacy vs. intimidation. The moment Admiral Helena Drake and her human delegation stepped into the Galactic Council chamber, the atmosphere changed. The room, typically filled with the low murmur of diplomatic discourse, fell into an uneasy silence. Every eye was on the humans, but especially on Drake, a figure who exuded authority and an unyielding resolve. It was clear to everyone present that this was not just another diplomatic mission, this was a psychological battle, one that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The subtle art of diplomacy. For millennia, the Galactic Council had perfected the art of diplomacy. The various species that made up the Council were masters of nuance, capable of conveying entire treaties in the subtle inflections of their language or the slight adjustments of their posture. Diplomacy was not just about what was said, but how it was said when it was said, and who said it. The Zevrak, with their long history and experience, were particularly adept at this. They had seen countless species come and go, had navigated more diplomatic crises than any other member of the Council. Their approach was one of cautious engagement, preferring to find common ground through dialogue and mutual understanding. They believed that words, carefully chosen, could prevent conflicts before they even began. The Xanthians, on the other hand, were more transactional in their diplomacy. To them, every interaction was an opportunity to gain an advantage, to secure a deal that would benefit their species. Their representatives were skilled negotiators, always looking for the leverage points that could turn a conversation in their favor. They were not above using subtle threats or promises of reward to get what they wanted, but they did so with a smile and a handshake. The Yorzani, ever the warriors, viewed diplomacy through the lens of strength. To them, diplomacy was simply another form of combat, where the sharpness of one's words was as important as the sharpness of one's blade. They respected those who spoke plainly and directly, but they also understood the value of psychological warfare. A well-timed display of force, a carefully crafted statement, could be as effective as any weapon. In this environment, every word, every gesture, every decision was part of a complex dance. The Council chamber was a battlefield where the stakes were the future of the galaxy and the weapons were words, treaties, and alliances. Humanity's approach, bluntness, and calculation. Humanity's entry into this arena was like a storm breaking over calm waters. The humans, led by Admiral Drake, were newcomers to the intricate dance of galactic diplomacy. But what they lacked in experience, they more than made up for with their sheer presence and the power they wielded. Drake was not a diplomat by training, she was a military leader, someone who had spent her life making decisions in the heat of battle. Her approach to diplomacy was shaped by that experience. To her, diplomacy was not about finding the most elegant solution, it was about securing the best possible outcome for her people. If that meant using intimidation, then so be it. The first words she spoke to the Council were carefully calculated to set the tone. "We come in peace," she declared, her voice steady and unyielding. But the message was layered. The use of the word peace was both a reassurance and a warning. It was a statement of intent, but also a declaration that humanity was prepared to enforce that peace on its own terms. This bluntness was unsettling to the other members of the Council. They were used to the intricate wordplay and veiled meanings of traditional diplomacy, where threats were implied rather than stated outright. Drake's directness was a challenge to the established norms of the Council, a reminder that humanity was not bound by the same rules. But there was more to Drake's approach than just bluntness. Behind her words was a keen understanding of psychology. She knew that the other species would be watching her every move, analyzing every word she said. She used this to her advantage, carefully crafting her statements to provoke specific reactions. For example, when she spoke of the human fleet stationed on the edge of their space, she did so with an almost casual tone, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But the implications were clear: humanity was ready for any eventuality. The fleet was not just a show of force, it was a psychological tool, a way to keep the other species off balance, constantly second-guessing their own strategies. Drake also understood the importance of body language. Throughout the meeting, she remained calm and composed, projecting an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. She met the eyes of each representative, unflinching, conveying through her gaze alone that humanity would not be intimidated. This was a stark contrast to the more reserved and cautious demeanor of the other diplomats, and it left a lasting impression. The impact on the other species. The psychological battle that Drake waged had immediate effects on the other species. The Zevrak, who had long been the guardians of tradition within the Council, found themselves at a loss. Their usual strategies of careful dialogue and mutual understanding seemed inadequate in the face of humanity's unapologetic strength. They were forced to reconsider their approach, to think about how they could engage with a species that valued action over words. The Xanthians, always looking for an angle, were intrigued. They recognized that humanity's bluntness could be both a weakness and a strength. On one hand, it made them predictable, easier to manipulate through economic incentives or threats. On the other hand, it also made them dangerous, as they were less likely to be swayed by the subtlety and nuance that the Xanthians excelled in. The Xanthians began to explore new strategies, looking for ways to exploit humanity's straightforwardness while avoiding a direct confrontation. The Urzani, however, saw humanity's approach as a challenge. They respected strength, and humanity had shown that in abundance. But they were also wary. The Urzani knew that psychological warfare was as important as physical combat, and they recognized that Drake was a master at it. They began to prepare for the possibility that they might one day face humanity not just in the council chamber, but on the battlefield as well. They started to engage in their own form of psychological warfare, subtly testing humanity's resolve, looking for any sign of weakness that they could exploit. The smaller species, caught in the crossfire of these shifting dynamics, were perhaps the most affected. They had always relied on the balance of power between the larger species to protect their own interests. Now they were faced with a new player who did not play by the same rules. They watched as humanity disrupted the established order, and they began to wonder what this meant for their own survival. Some sought to align themselves with humanity, hoping to secure their protection. Others began to form alliances with each other, fearing that they might be caught in the crossfire of a larger conflict. The psychological impact of humanity's presence was profound, creating a ripple effect throughout the Council. The unspoken threat. One of the most potent tools in Drake's psychological arsenal was the unspoken threat that lingered beneath every word she said. She never explicitly threatened the other species, but the implications were always there, just beneath the surface. This was a calculated move, designed to keep the other species on edge, constantly guessing at humanity's true intentions. When Drake spoke of peace, it was with the understanding that peace was only possible if humanity's interests were respected. This unspoken threat was a reminder that humanity was not afraid to use force if necessary. The sight of the human fleet on the edge of their space was a constant, looming presence, a silent declaration that humanity would not be underestimated or ignored. This strategy was deeply unsettling to the other species. They were used to dealing with threats that were overt, that could be addressed through negotiation or military action. But the unspoken threat that humanity represented was something different. It was a psychological weapon, one that could not be easily countered. The Zevrak, in particular, found this approach deeply troubling. They had always believed that diplomacy was the key to maintaining peace in the galaxy, that conflicts could be avoided through careful dialogue and mutual understanding. But humanity's unspoken threats challenged this belief, forcing the Zevrak to confront the possibility that they might not be able to prevent a conflict with humanity through diplomacy alone. A foreboding future, the rise of a new galactic power. As the Galactic Council convened to address the arrival of humanity, the sense of unease among its members grew palpable. The human delegation, led by Admiral Helena Drake, had already made a dramatic impact with their display of power and their approach to diplomacy. The implications of this new player in the galactic arena were profound and far-reaching, setting the stage for a future that was as uncertain as it was potentially transformative. The dawn of a new era. Humanity's sudden emergence as a major galactic power was nothing short of revolutionary. For eons, the Galactic Council had been a stable institution, its power dynamics and hierarchies well established. The arrival of humanity, with its formidable fleet and its unorthodox approach to diplomacy, heralded the dawn of a new era. The old certainties were being challenged, and the once familiar landscape of galactic politics was being redrawn. The Council members found themselves grappling with the reality that humanity was not just another species to be included in their discussions, they were a disruptive force with the potential to reshape the galaxy. This realization set off a cascade of reactions, from strategic recalibrations to shifts in alliances, as each species began to assess how they would fit into this new order. Strategic recalculations and the emergence of new alliances. In the wake of humanity's arrival, the established powers of the Galactic Council were compelled to undertake significant strategic recalculations. The Zevrak, traditionally the guardians of tradition and diplomacy, were forced to reconsider their role in a galaxy where power could no longer be measured by age and experience alone. They began to explore new forms of engagement with humanity, seeking to leverage their own diplomatic skills to find common ground and to ensure that their voice would not be drowned out by the new power on the block. The Xanthians, with their deep involvement in galactic trade and technology, saw both opportunity and threat in humanity's presence. They recognized that humanity's technological prowess could open up new avenues for economic cooperation. However, they were also aware that humanity's independent streak and their willingness to use force if necessary posed a challenge to their established economic dominance. The Xanthians began to forge new trade agreements, looking for ways to integrate humanity into their economic framework while preparing contingencies for any potential conflicts. The Yurzani, the galaxy's foremost military power, faced a unique dilemma. They respected humanity's strength but were wary of the implications for their own position. The Yurzani were accustomed to being the enforcers of galactic peace, but with humanity's military might now on the scene, they had to rethink their role. The Yurzani began to strengthen their own alliances, engage in military exercises, and prepare for the possibility of direct confrontation or collaboration with humanity, all while keeping a close watch on any signs of aggression. For the smaller species within the Council, the rise of humanity was a source of both hope and fear. Some saw the potential for protection and advancement by aligning with the new power, hoping that humanity's influence could serve as a counterbalance to the dominance of the larger species. Others were more cautious, fearing that humanity's rise might lead to a shift in the balance of power that could leave them vulnerable. These smaller species began to seek new alliances among themselves and with other powers, striving to secure their place in an increasingly uncertain future. The shifting balance of power. Humanity's entry into the Galactic Council was more than just a change in the roster of species. It represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power. The traditional power structures, based on long-standing alliances and historical dominance, were being tested. The established powers had to confront the possibility that their long-held positions of influence might be challenged or even overturned. The balance of power in the galaxy was no longer static. With humanity's emergence, the dynamics of influence and control were in flux. The Council's decisions and policies would now have to account for the unpredictable and powerful new player. This shifting balance created a climate of uncertainty and speculation. The future of the galaxy was now in question, with no clear path forward. The uncertain path forward. As the Council sessions continued, the foreboding sense of a new order began to take shape. The uncertainty was not just about immediate outcomes, but about the long-term implications of humanity's rise. The Council faced the challenge of integrating humanity into its existing structures while managing the potential for conflict and disruption. The future of the galaxy was now a matter of strategic planning and cautious diplomacy. Every decision made in the Council chambers had the potential to influence the galaxy's trajectory. The established powers had to navigate this new reality with care, balancing their own interests with the need to accommodate humanity's rising influence. Humanity's presence was a reminder that the galaxy was an ever-evolving entity, subject to the forces of change and adaptation. The rise of a new power was both a threat and an opportunity, and how the Council responded would determine the course of galactic history. The ripple effect across the galaxy. The impact of humanity's rise was not confined to the Council itself. The ripple effects were felt throughout the galaxy. Species and civilizations that were not part of the Council but had been watching from the sidelines began to reassess their own positions. The rise of humanity sparked a broader realignment of galactic politics, as various factions and powers recalibrated their strategies in response to the new reality. This realignment was marked by a flurry of diplomatic activity, as various species sought to position themselves advantageously in the face of humanity's ascent. Some sought to establish direct contact with humanity, hoping to forge alliances or trade agreements. Others sought to distance themselves, either out of fear or strategic calculation, aiming to avoid being caught in the crossfire of any potential conflicts. In this environment of shifting alliances and uncertain futures, the galaxy became a theater of strategic maneuvering. The rise of humanity had set off a chain reaction, creating new opportunities and challenges for every species. The once stable galactic order was now in a state of flux, and the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. The legacy of humanity's impact. As time passed, the legacy of humanity's impact began to take shape. The Council's efforts to integrate humanity and adapt to the new power dynamics would define the future of the galaxy. The decisions made in these critical moments would reverberate through history, shaping the trajectory of galactic civilization for generations to come. Humanity's rise was not just a moment of change, but a profound transformation in the galactic order. The legacy of their impact would be measured not only by the immediate consequences, but also by the long-term evolution of the galaxy's political, economic, and social landscape. The rise of humanity was a reminder that the galaxy was a dynamic and ever-changing entity, subject to the forces of ambition, power, and adaptation. In the end, the story of humanity's emergence as a galactic power was a tale of transformation, uncertainty, and potential. It was a narrative that highlighted the complexities of power, the intricacies of diplomacy, and the enduring quest for influence in a galaxy where the only constant was change. The future was unwritten, and the only certainty was that humanity's role in shaping it would be both significant and enduring. The Galactic Council Humanity's Arrival. Chapter 1: The Invitation. For millennia, the Galactic Council had been a symbol of order and balance across the galaxy. It represented the unification of the most powerful and ancient civilizations, an alliance bound by fragile diplomacy, collective governance, and shared interests. The species in the Council had coexisted, sometimes uneasily, but always under the banner of cooperation, their conflicts resolved within the grand chambers of this vast interstellar body. However, all that was about to change. In the distant reaches of the Milky Way, humanity had risen. Once confined to their home planet Earth, they had rapidly expanded, their technology evolving at a pace that astonished even the most advanced civilizations. What had started as rumors and scattered reports of Earth's exploratory ships turned into undeniable reality when a formidable human fleet appeared on the Council's radar, seeking formal inclusion into the Galactic Assembly. The Council, cautious and calculating, extended an invitation to Earth. They had seen new species emerge before, but nothing quite like this. Some of the older members, like the Zevrak, dismissed humanity as upstarts, unseasoned, and impulsive. Others, like the Xanthians, saw potential in the humans' advanced technology. The Urzani, ever the military strategists, were wary. The invitation was issued not just to welcome humanity, but to observe them closely, an opportunity to evaluate whether this ambitious species would become an ally or a threat. Chapter 2: The Arrival of Humanity. The Galactic Council's Chamber, A vast amphitheater orbiting a neutral star in the galaxy's center was a marvel of design. Each species had its own wing, its architecture reflecting their unique cultures. This day, the anticipation was palpable. A new species, humanity, was to arrive. Admiral Helena Drake, representing the United Earth government, entered with her delegation. The humans were dressed in sleek, militaristic uniforms, their bearing confident yet diplomatic. Behind her, screens displayed images of Earth's fleet, a powerful, intimidating sight, with starships sleek and brimming with weaponry, unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The room was silent as Drake took her place at the central podium, her sharp blue eyes scanning the faces of her alien counterparts. She spoke, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you as a representative of Earth and of humanity. We seek to join this council as equals, to contribute to the peace and prosperity of this galaxy, and to forge alliances built on mutual respect. There were murmurs among the council members, but none spoke yet. Drake continued, however, make no mistake, our aim is not subservience nor domination. We come with a message of cooperation, but we are prepared to defend our interests should the need arise. This was no empty threat. Humanity's display of power had been intentional. The council's members were old and wise, but not naive. They understood the underlying message: Earth was a force to be reckoned with, a player that would not bow easily. Chapter 3: Reactions of the Council. The council members, many of whom had lived through countless diplomatic meetings, were rattled by humanity's boldness. The Zevrak, the most ancient of the species, known for their wisdom and long lives, were the first to speak. Elder Raller, their leader, rose slowly from his seat, his voice smooth and calculating. We welcome the humans to our council. Your rise has been swift, and your arrival was not unexpected. Yet we must remind you, Admiral Drake, that power alone does not dictate one's place in this galaxy. It is diplomacy, tradition, and mutual respect that sustains the order we have carefully built. Drake nodded, showing respect, but her eyes remained hard. Diplomacy is why we are here, Elder Raller. But tradition will not stand in the way of progress. We intend to contribute as equals. The Xanthians, ever pragmatic and opportunistic, were quick to seize on this. Their leader, Exarlos, leaned forward, his multi-limbed form twitching with excitement. Humans, your technology is quite impressive. Perhaps we could discuss trade agreements? The Xanthian Consortium would be most interested in what your people have to offer. Drake smiled slightly. We're open to that. There's much we could share. But not all were as welcoming. The Urzani, the Council's military powerhouse, viewed the human fleet with suspicion. General Kael, a towering figure covered in battle scars, spoke with a growl. Your fleet is formidable, too formidable. What assurances can you give that you won't turn that power against the Council should we displease you? Drake met his gaze without flinching. The same assurances we give to all who respect our sovereignty. We have no interest in conquest, General, but we will defend ourselves if challenged. The Council was split. Some saw humanity as a potential ally, others as a threat. But all understood one thing: Earth was not to be underestimated. Chapter 4: The Tension of Uncertainty. As days passed, the deliberations within the Council intensified. Humanity's fleet remained stationed just outside the neutral zone, a silent reminder of their strength. The Council members met privately, discussing how to integrate this powerful new species without disrupting the fragile balance they had maintained for centuries. The Zevrak, advocates of tradition and caution, continued to stress diplomacy. Elder Raller convened secret meetings, urging the other species to tread carefully with humanity. They are young, impulsive, and prone to war, he warned. We must guide them, lest they upset the order we have fought to preserve. But not all agreed with his caution. Exarlos, ever the opportunist, began pushing for immediate cooperation. They are a rising power, he argued. It is better to profit from their advancements than to fight them. Trade with Earth could bring untold wealth to our consortium. The Urzani were the most conflicted. General Kale respected humanity's strength but remained distrustful. He began conducting secret war games, preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. The Urzani military was vast, but the humans were unpredictable, and Kale was not one to leave anything to chance. Meanwhile, Admiral Drake and her delegation were not idle. They held private meetings with individual species, forming tentative alliances and learning the intricacies of council politics. Drake was a shrewd diplomat as well as a seasoned military leader, but she understood that power alone would not secure humanity's place. It would take careful maneuvering, patience, and, if necessary, a show of force. Chapter 5: The New Galactic Order. Weeks of deliberation finally culminated in a tense session of the Council. The question of humanity's official membership was to be decided. The chamber was packed with representatives from across the galaxy, all awaiting the outcome. Admiral Drake stood before the Council once again. Her expression was calm, but the weight of the moment was clear. "We have shown you what humanity is capable of," she began. "Our technology, our fleet, and our resolve. But we are not here to conquer. We are here to contribute. To build a future where Earth and the galaxy prosper together." The Council members voted, each species casting their decision. The Zevrak hesitated but ultimately voted in favor, seeing the potential for guiding humanity's development. The Xanthians, eager for trade, were quick to support the humans. The Urzani, after long deliberation, also voted yes, though their distrust remained palpable. When the final vote was cast, humanity was officially accepted into the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in murmurs, and Drake gave a small, satisfied smile. The power dynamics of the galaxy had shifted. Humanity had arrived, and with them, the promise and the threat of a new galactic order. But this was only the beginning. As humanity settled into its place among the stars, the future of the Galactic Council was now uncertain. Old alliances would be tested, new conflicts would arise, and the galaxy would never be the same again.